Before we begin with electronic mail security, we need to understand why is it required to provide security for an email. Okay, so there are certain reasons, as we all know, because we widely use email nowadays. So this is one of the network based application, and as a user we expect to send an email to others who are connected either directly or indirectly to the internet, regardless of the operating system. No matter which operating system they use, they should be able to access their emails. Because we are highly dependent on the email, there is a very huge demand. So it is essential that this email has to be authenticated and there should be confidentiality. So there are two schemes mainly which will help in providing this authentication and confidentiality, and they are called as Pretty Good Privacy, which is in short referred to as PGP, and we have SMIME. So this SMIME corresponds to the Secure Multipurpose Internet Mail Extension, and we have mentioned about this earlier also when we looked into the transport layer security. So the two concepts that will provide authentication and confidentiality to an email are Pretty Good Privacy and SMIME. So in today's class we will be looking into the first one, that is the Pretty Good Privacy, in short referred to as the PGP. So this PGP basically provides confidentiality and authentication service that can be used for electronic mail and file storage applications. And this was discovered by Philip R. Zimmermann. He is basically the creator of PGP. Now, there are certain reasons as to why we go for PGP, and there are reasons why we follow a certain kind of procedure when it comes to authentication and confidentiality. The first one among them is that the selected best available cryptographic algorithm is used as a building block. Secondly, the integrated algorithms can be used into a general purpose application that is independent of the operating system and the processor, and that is based on a small set of easy to use commands. Moreover, if you see, these are made into packages and its documentation includes the source code, and they are freely available on the internet in the form of bulletin boards or in the form of commercial networks. Moreover, we have the emails which have entered into an agreement with the company which will provide fully compatible low cost commercial version of PGP. So that is why, because of these reasons, we mainly prefer the Pretty Good Privacy scheme in order to provide email security. Now, there are other reasons why there is plenty of growth that is seen in the PGP. Okay, and here you can see the four main reasons. The first one is that it is available free worldwide in versions that can run on a variety of platforms, including the Windows, Unix. Moreover, in addition, we have the commercial version which satisfies the user who want a product that comes into the vendor support. Secondly, it's based on algorithms that have survived extensive public review and are considered extremely secure. Specifically, the package includes RSA, DSS and Diffie-Hellman for public key encryption, CAST128 IDEA and 3DES for symmetric encryption, and SHA-1 for hash coding. In the third reason for the growth, we see that there is a wide range of applicability from corporations that wish to select and enforce a standardized scheme for encrypting files and messages to individuals who wish to communicate securely with others worldwide over the internet and any other network. Then we have the reason wherein we can see that this can be controlled by any governmental or a standard organization. So for those with an instinctive distrust of the establishment, this PGP will be a very attractive scheme. So because of these 4 reasons, there is a plenty of growth and widely adopted scheme, which is the PGP. Now, before we begin with the overall operation of the PGP, we need to look into the various notations that are involved. So here you can see we have certain notations which we have used earlier, but in this case probably the representation would be little different. So we have KS, which corresponds to the session key used in the symmetric encryption, PRA, private key of the user A, PUA, public key of the user A, EP, public key encryption, DP, public key decryption, EC, symmetric encryption, DC, symmetric decryption, H, hash function, concatenation, Z is compression using the zip algorithm, R64 is basically corresponding to the conversion to Radix 64 ASCII format. So these are the various notations that we will be using when we looked into the various processes that are involved in the PGP. So the PGP documentation, if you look into it, it uses the term basically secret key, which is actually referring to the key that is paired with the public key in public key encryption scheme. But since this secret key is often confused with the secret key used for symmetric encryption, we will in this case refer to the term private key. So secret key in our PGP will be referred to as the private key, which you will have to remember, because wherever we use the term private key, it basically refers to the secret key. So here you can see under the actual operation of the PGP, basically it consists of 4 services. The first one is authentication, second one is confidentiality, third one is compression, and the fourth one is email compatibility. Now all these 4 services are presented here in the form of a table. So authentication basically corresponds to a digital signature, confidentiality corresponds to message encryption, compression is written as it is, email compatibility is written as it is. So for each of these services you can see the various algorithms that are used, and also the description for the each service has been specified here. So what is being done in each and every case you can see here. So if you look at the first one, authentication, we either use the DSS with SHA or RSA with SHA. For confidentiality, we use CAST or IDEA or the 3-SKI triple DES with Diffie-Hellman or the RSA. For compression, we usually go for the zip algorithm. For email compatibility, we mainly go for the algorithm which uses the Radix 64 conversion. Now let us examine each of these 4 services in much detail. So first one that we have here is authentication. So if you can recall from the table that I specified, authentication basically corresponds to the digital signature service that is provided by the PGP. So in this case you can see you have a diagram which illustrates how the authentication process goes on. So here first the sender will create a message which is represented as M in this case. Then we have SHA1, that is the hash code which is used to generate a 160-bit hash code for the message. Then this hash code is encrypted with a RSA using the sender's private key, and the result is prepended, or I can say concatenated to the message. Then the receiver will, so next after concatenation you can see this is compression. So at the receiver side, the receiver will use the RSA with the sender's public key to decrypt and recover the hash code. So the receiver also generates a new hash code for the message, and it will compare it with the decrypted hash code, that is this one. And if the two match, that is this decrypted hash code and this newly generated hash code match, then the message is considered to be authentic. Now, in this case, we have considered the combination of the hash code SHA-1 with RSA, and this basically provides one of the effective digital signature scheme, because the strength of the RSA is very good, and the recipient is always assured that only the possessor of the matching private key can generate the signature. Also, because of the strength of SHA-1, the recipient is assured that no one else could generate a new message that matches with the hash code, hence the signature of the original message. Now, it's not compulsion that we have to always go for SHA-1 and RSA. There is an alternative to this. We can also choose DSS plus SHA-1. So, the signatures are normally, you can see, normally they are found attached to the message or the file that they sign, but this is not always the case. So that is why we have a concept called as the detached signatures that are supported in this case. So a detached signature may be stored and transmitted separately from the message it signs. So if a user wishes to maintain a separate signature, he can do so. So he can maintain a separate signature log for all the messages that are sent or received. Basically, a detached signature is an executable program that can detect any virus infection. So finally what happens is that this detached signature can be used when more than one party must sign a document, say such as a legal contract, and each person's signature will be independent and therefore will be applied to the document. Otherwise, the signature would have to be nested, with the second signer signing both the document and the first signature, and so on. So you should remember here basically is that it can be used when one or more than one party must sign a particular document. So that's all about the first service, that is authentication. The next one that we have is confidentiality, and this is a basic service that is being provided by the PGP, and this is provided by encrypting messages to be transmitted or to be stored locally as files. So in both the cases, here we go for cast 128 if we go for the symmetric encryption, or we can also choose the IDEA or the 3-DES, that is a triple DES. And in this case, when we provide confidentiality, we also use the 64-bit cipher feedback mode, and there is always one must address the problem of the key distribution in this particular case. So if you look at the process here, what will happen is that each symmetric key will be used just once, and a new key will be generated as a random 128-bit number for each message, and this will be referred to in the document as a session key. So this is basically a one-time key, and the session key is bound to the message and transmitted with it. Okay, so the session key is bound to the message and it is transmitted with it. You can see here KS. So let us look into this diagram and explain how it functions. Okay, so first what happens is that the sender will generate a message and a random 128-bit number to be used as a session key for this message only. The message is then encrypted using cast 128 or IDEA or 3DES with the session key. You can see here the session key is encrypted within RSA using the recipient's public key, and it will be prepended meaning concatenated to the message. The receiver uses this RSA with its private key to decrypt and recover the session key. The session key is used to decrypt this particular message. So you can see finally after decompression we obtain the original message at the receiver side. Now an alternative to the use of RSA for key encryption, we have the Diffie-Hellman. Basically we have a variant of the Diffie-Hellman which is referred to as the El-Gamal, which can be used for the key encryption. Now there are certain observations that are made when we look into this process of confidentiality. So the first observation that you can see is that in this case we use the combination of symmetric and public key encryption, which is one of the preferred methods because this reduces the encryption time. Secondly, we make use of the public key algorithm that solves the session key distribution problem because only the recipient is able to recover the session key that is bound to the message. Then we can see that the use of one-time symmetric key generally strengthens already existing strong symmetric encryption approach. So only a small amount of plain text is encrypted with each key, and there is no relationship among the keys. So to the extent that the public key algorithm is secure, the entire scheme that we are using will be secure. So if you see here, PGP generally provides the user with a wide range of key size options. In this case, say 768 bits to 3072 bits. So these are the various observations made when we go for the second service, that is confidentiality. Now in the third service, this is not the third service actually. Third service is compression. This is another service wherein we combine both confidentiality and authentication. So both the services are used for the same message. So you can see first a signature will be generated for the plain text message and it will be prepended to the message. Then the plain text plus the signature is encrypted using the cast 128, and the session key is also encrypted using the RSA. And this sequence is actually preferable if it is opposite, that is encrypting the message and then generating the signature for the encrypted message. So it's more convenient to store a signature with the plain text version of the message. So for the purposes of third party verification, what we generally do is if the signature is performed first, a third party need not be concerned with the symmetric key when verifying the signature. So if you look at the receiver side, it will be just the reverse operation. So basically if you look at the two services, confidentiality and authentication, which we have seen earlier, here in this figure it's combining both the two services, confidentiality and authentication. So whatever algorithm that you have seen previously, here in this case this is basically a concatenation of both of them. So if you have to summarize this confidentiality and authentication service, if provided together, we can say that when both these services are used, the sender will first sign the message with its own private key, then he will perform encryption of the message with the session key, and finally he will encrypt the session key with the recipient's public key. Next, so this is the third service that is being provided by the PGP, which is the compression. So as a default, you can see that PGP compresses the message after applying the signature but before the encryption. So this basically has a benefit of saving space both for email transmission and for file storage. And the placement of the compression algorithm in this case, in the diagrams that we have seen earlier, we can see that Z is corresponding to compression and Z inverse basically corresponds to decompression. Now, there are various reasons we can say as to why we perform the signature to be generated before compression. So the first one is that you can say that signature is preferable because to sign an uncompressed message, only one will have to store only the uncompressed message together with the signature for further verification. So if any person signed a compressed document, then it would be necessary either to store a compressed version of the message for a later verification or to recompress the message when verification is required. Moreover, we also have another reason wherein if one is willing to generate dynamically a recompressed message for verification, then PGP's compression algorithm will present a difficulty. So that is why the algorithm is said to be non-deterministic, and various implementations for this algorithm will have a certain trade-offs. So we can say that these compression algorithms that we are looking into are interoperable because any version of the algorithm can correctly decompress the output of any other version. So if we are applying the hash function and the signature after the compression, this will constrain all the PGP implementations to the same version of the compression algorithm. Then another reason as to why we go for the compression, which is that is signature being generated before the compression, is that the message encryption is applied after compression mainly because we want to strengthen the cryptographic security, because if we are looking at the compressed message, it will have less redundancy than the original plain text. So crypt analysis becomes very, very difficult. So that's all about the third service, that is compression. The next one, that is the last service, email compatibility. So in email compatibility, when we use PGP, so the smallest of the smallest block to be transmitted needs to be encrypted. So if only the signature service is used, then the message digest is encrypted. If the confidentiality service is used, then the message plus signatures are encrypted. So in generally, if I have to tell, part or all the resulting blocks that consist of a stream of 8-bit octets will be encrypted. So in order to accommodate this, this PGP generally provides a service of converting a raw 8-bit binary stream to a stream of printable ASCII characters, and this scheme, which is used for this purpose, that is for the purpose of conversion of an 8-bit binary stream to a stream of printable ASCII characters is termed as the radix 64 conversion. So here each group of 3 octates, okay, each group of 3 octates of binary data is mapped into 4 ASCII characters. And this format also appends a CRC to detect the transmission errors. So I can say that the radix 64 will expand a message by 33%, but because the session key and the signature portions of the messages are relatively compact and the plain text message has been compressed, so the compression should be more than enough to compensate for this radix 64 expansion. Another important thing to be noted here is that the radix 64 algorithm will blindly convert the input stream to a radix 64 format regardless of the content. Even if the input happens to be an ASCII text, it will simply convert. So if a message is signed but not encrypted and the conversion is applied to the entire block, the output will be unreadable to the observer. So which will provide a certain level of confidentiality. So as an option, generally what we do is PGP can be configured to convert a radix 64 format only the signature portion of the signed plaintext messages. So what will this do is that it will enable the human recipient at least to read the message without using the PGP. So let us look into the 4 services that we have seen, that is authentication, confidentiality, compression and email compatibility in this flow diagram that we have. So we will look into it, what happens at the transmitter and what happens at the receiver. So this first one corresponds to the transmission of the PGP message. So here on transmission you can see that we have the file corresponding to X. So a signature is generated using a hash code of the uncompressed plain text. Then the plain text plus the signature. So that is why you can see here there is a concatenation of X plus signature. So the plain text plus the signature, if it is present, will be compressed. And if confidentiality is required, if it's a yes, then the plain text or the compressed signature plus the plain text will be encrypted and prepended. Prepended meaning concatenated with the public key encrypted symmetric encryption key. So you can see if confidentiality is required, then either it could be the direct plain text or the compressed signature plus the plain text will be encrypted and concatenated with the public key encrypted symmetric key. Finally, this entire block will be converted into a radix 64 format. Now at the transmitter side, this will be a reverse operation. So we have the incoming block which is first converted in from the radix 64 format to a binary format. So if the message is encrypted, then the recipient has to recover the session key, which is represented as KS, and decrypt the message in order to get an X here. Then the resulting block is decompressed. So you can see Z inverse is used because it is decompression. So if the message is signed or no, that needs to be verified. If it is signed, the recipient recovers the transmitted hash code and it will finally compare it with the own calculation of the hash code. That comparison part is not shown basically, but what will happen is if the message is signed, the recipient will recover the transmitted hash code, and then it will compare it with its own calculation of the hash code. So this is about the 4 services which will be combined together and presented at the transmitter and the receiver side.